I have received a letter from the honourable member for Deakin proposing that a definite matter of public importance be submitted to the House for discussion, namely this government's weak response to the CFMEU driving up the cost of housing. I call upon those honourable members who approve of the proposed discussion to rise in their places, and I give the call to the honourable member for Deakin.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Not that you would know it from question time last week, but nobody questions the fact that the actions of the CFMEU over a long period of time have driven up construction costs in this country, including in the residential housing industry. What does that mean for everyday Australians? Well, it means for a young Australian couple or a single, someone looking to buy their first home, that the bar to getting into that first home is higher and harder because of the actions of the CFMEU. Now, I say that that was what we expected to be well understood on both sides of the chamber until last week, when the hapless new housing minister, who has failed her way into the housing portfolio, made a quite extraordinary claim at the dispatch box. The housing minister claimed, and this is novel because I've never seen anyone argue this, let alone a minister or even a member of the Labor Party, claimed that there were experts out there who believe that the CFMEU does not drive up construction costs. Experts that don't believe that they drive up construction costs. So I thought that was a very interesting throwaway line. So on a number of occasions I gave the minister an opportunity to name who those experts were. I asked her on multiple occasions whether she was willing to illuminate us as to who those experts were that claimed that the CFMEU has no impact, none whatsoever, on housing costs in this country. Well, it was a pretty cringeworthy effort, and I saw members opposite putting their heads down as the minister filibustered and weaved and couldn't answer the question, of course, because we know there are no experts that claim that the CFMEU don't drive up construction costs, because the truth is the CFMEU drives up costs by 30% in this country. 30%. Now, if you're a first-home buyer desperately scratching around for every single dollar so you can put it into a deposit to get into your first home, imagine what a 30% reduction in the cost of that home would do. Imagine the difference it would make for that young couple, that individual trying to buy a home in this country. And the truth is that every single member of the government is complicit with that tax on first-home buyers. It's a 30% Labor tax on first-home buyers because, let's be honest, the CFMEU, this is their business model. Their business model is funding and putting Labor members of parliament into this chamber, so they're wholly owned, like puppets. They've got to do what the CFMEU asks. Every single one of them has benefited from the millions of dollars kicked into their campaign coffers every single election. And just like the famous Bill Hunter line in Muriel's wedding, Deirdre Chambers, there's bad behaviour in the CFMEU. I mean, seeing the acting that's going on that side of the chamber, the feigning ignorance as to the costs that are imposed on Australians has, I think, been one of the more shameful episodes for this government. Now, there's been independent modelling undertaken. We talk about 30%, and we've got people in the gallery today, Australians listening in. We talk about a 30% increase to construction costs and what that does for first-home buyers. Well, the Queensland Economic Advocacy Solutions, which was commissioned by the master builders, did some work on what it practically means. What does it mean? What does this unholy alliance between the thuggish CFMEU and the Labor Party, the people that they put into this parliament, what does it do for first-home buyers in this country? Well, the truth is, according to this modelling, for a one-bedroom apartment in Queensland, the CFMEU tax imposed by the Labor Party on first-home buyers is $128,543. $128,543. And every single member of the government is happy to impose that $128,000 tax on first home buyers because it means more money into their coffers each election, more thugs on their polling booths handing out their how-to-vote cards. That's what they are willing to do. Now, for a two-bedroom apartment in Queensland, what does Labor's CFMEU tax on first home buyers amount to? $257,086. $257,086. Now, I know there's theatre in this place, and I know that I'm having a go at the government here, but does anyone on the government benches have a conscience that first home buyers should not be bearing that additional tax? Surely every decent person in this chamber wants more first home buyers to get into a market, and we know the deposit hurdle is one of the hardest parts of getting into a home. I'm sure many people in this place have experienced the same thing. You decide, I want to buy a home. This is the amount I think I'm going to have to save before I can go to the bank and get financed and buy something. And often, by the time you've saved that amount, the market's moved, house prices have increased, construction costs have increased, and what you thought was going to be a deposit is short. And one of the reasons that deposit is short, and one of the reasons it's even shorter than it should be, is because of the Labor CFMEU tax imposed on first home buyers around this country. Now, there was howls of protest from those opposite when I refer to the fact that they are just a part of the CFMEU business model. That's it. Shake down employers for money. Shake down employers for money. Make first home buyers pay more for their homes. Kick in money into the coffers of the Labor Party. Heck, actually pre-select the candidates with their votes on the floor of their state conference. And what does that get you? Control. Well, what it gets you is one of the first items of business of this government, removing the ABCC. It was number one on John Setka's hit list. John Setka had his wish list here, the top 10 things you need to do, and Labor's busily been going about in a studious fashion, crossing those things off. Well, first on the list was the ABCC. Now, Ernst & Young conducted a whole-of-economy modelling exercise to look at the impacts of abolishing the ABCC. And for those who don't know what the Australian Building and Construction Commission did, it was the cop on the beat to try and deal with the thugs in the CFMEU, the bikies, the criminals, the Labor Party members who cavort with them, to try and get them under control. So what did this government do? What did every member who's now interjecting do? They voted to abolish the ABCC, which did this: reduce worker productivity by 9.3%, a total economic loss of $47.5 billion, cost 4,000 jobs, and has contributed to that CFMEU Labor tax on first home buyers that I've just referred to. So it's quite shameful. It's quite shameful that this government. It's quite shameful that this government would continue to run protection, and it's even worse. It's even worse that a new minister, quite frankly, who had failed so badly in the Home Affairs portfolio that she was moved. And as I've said repeatedly, housing is far too important. Housing is far too important for Australians to treat the portfolio as a dumping ground for a failed minister. And it only took us one day of question time to see why the issues with housing are likely to get worse, not better, under her stewardship, because she couldn't even level with the Australian people that the CFMEU has increased construction costs. To debase yourself so badly by claiming that the CFMEU has not impacted residential house prices and construction costs is something, quite frankly, that shocks, I know, many people on the other side of the House, because even the Daily Mail reported colleagues of the Housing Minister asking the question, is it too soon to have another reshuffle? Is it too soon to have another reshuffle? Because the truth is, if the minister cannot even agree that the CFMEU imposes a tax on first home buyers, what hope does this government have of addressing the housing crisis that their big Australian migration policy has created?